Meiman. I watch the battle and pick up attributes, 10,000 times critical strike. Chapter 11. On a certain floor of a building. In the innermost office. A bald man looked at the camera footage on the computer. He saw a blind man walk into the building. When he saw the other party, a fierce look appeared on the bald man's face. Why is this blind man here? He immediately pressed the phone in front of him and shouted, "Stop this blind man. Let him die here today." Quote. Yes. A response came from the other end of the phone. Daredevil came to the elevator with a cold face. Ding. The elevator arrived. He walked into the elevator and pressed the number of the destination floor. Whoosh. Outside the building, an extremely tough cobweb was stuck to the wall. Then a figure followed closely behind and landed on the wall. Li Shu said, "Which floor?" In the distance. Daisy quickly tapped on the keyboard and the code flew past. Soon, she hacked into the camera in the elevator. She saw the floor number of the building that Daredevil had pressed. Daisy quickly replied, "The 15th floor." Then she tapped on the keyboard again and a three-dimensional map of the white structure of the building appeared on the computer screen. The structural lines of the 15th floor turned yellow, making the 15th floor stand out. At the same time, Li Shu also turned into a red dot and appeared on the wall outside the 32nd floor of the building. In addition, according to the camera, Daredevil also turned into a green dot and appeared in the three-dimensional image. The next moment, the three-dimensional map was sent to Li Shu's phone. "I've marked the 15th floor and marked Daredevil as a green dot." Li Shu took out his phone and looked at the three-dimensional map on it. He clicked his tongue slightly. This was really too convenient. Daisy, this little assistant, was really not wrong to hire. She was not pleasing to the eye, but she was practical and capable. He hoped that the little assistant could be more capable. He looked at the three-dimensional map and climbed into a room on the 15th floor through a window. Pa! There was a soft sound. Li Shu landed steadily. The next moment, gazes fell on Li Shu. He saw. Inside the room. A group of burly men were taking out various knives and guns from the cabinet with ferocious expressions. They looked at Li Shu, who had jumped in inexplicably, especially when the person was wearing a mask. Their expressions froze. The burly men were speechless. Both sides stared at each other. Li Shu looked at everyone and coughed. "You guys continue. Don't worry about me." These were Li Shu's heartfelt words. After all, these people were supposed to fight Daredevil and increase his drop rate, not fight him and reduce his drop rate. However, how could anyone listen to this? Who the hell is this? Quote. Shish asterisk T. Kill him. Quote. Whoosh. The machetes were raised high in the air, shining brightly. A group of people rushed towards Li Shu. "Look at this." Li Shu sighed. "You really don't understand human language. Isn't it good to live for a few more minutes?" Li Shu had already put a stop to this group of criminals who sold children and even children's organs. Li Shu had the mentality of a normal person. If he saw injustice, and it was within the scope of his ability, he wouldn't mind enforcing justice. The man in the saber looked at Li Shu. Li Shu reached out and, as fast as lightning, grabbed the other party's neck in an instant. Seeing a hand suddenly appear on his neck, the other party was slightly stunned and didn't understand the situation. The next moment, crack, his neck had been cleanly broken. Li Shu immediately moved. He swept through the scene like a storm. He raised his hand and shot out cobwebs, tying the criminals' necks. He exerted force. Cracking sounds could be heard continuously. Bang! 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 Corpses fell to the ground one by one. A few steel knives slashed at him. Li Shu didn't even dodge. Instead, he shot out cobwebs. Seeing this, the burly men were overjoyed. Through the camera in the room. Daisy also saw this scene and her little face changed drastically. Exclamations sounded in Li Shu's ears. "Boss! Hurry up and dodge!" Quote. The steel knives directly slashed at Li Shu's body. The burly men were overjoyed, but then their faces changed drastically. Because the knives cut through his clothes, but they couldn't go any further. A knife slashed at his neck. The knife sank slightly, but it couldn't go any further. It was as if an invisible barrier stopped the knife. Li Shu felt a slight pain in his ear. He clicked his tongue slightly. "Daisy, you're going to make me deaf." As he spoke, he exerted force in his hand. The necks of the people in front of him all cracked. They immediately fell to the ground. The knives also fell to the ground. And only a white mark was left on Li Shu's neck. When Daisy saw this scene, she covered her mouth with her small hand and her pupils trembled. God, what kind of monster did she follow? Not only was he a strengthened version of Spider-Man, but even the steel knives couldn't break through his defense. When the rest of the people saw this scene, their eyes were full of fear. It was as if they had seen a monster. They had thought that Daredevil, who had come today, was already a very troublesome existence. But they didn't expect that a real monster would suddenly appear. His strength was simply terrifying. Perhaps only the legendary monsters of the Avengers Alliance could compare to him. Everyone was frightened out of their wits. They all turned around and wanted to escape. Li Shu shook his head. I just said to let you do your own thing. No, it's too late to change your mind now. As he spoke, he pressed his two middle fingers against his wrist. Whoosh! The cobweb split into many beams and shot out like a poisonous snake, chasing after the people who were running away. Goodbye. Li Shu smiled and exerted force in his hand. Crack! Crack! Sounds rang out one after another. Bang bang bang. The rest of the people fell to the ground. Their weapons also fell to the ground one after another. When Daisy saw this from the camera, her heart was deeply shaken. She swallowed a mouthful of saliva. My boss is too cool. She looked at the figure on the screen and there was a trace of worship in her eyes. She couldn't help but mutter to herself, if only he could be more serious normally. Li Shu's voice rang in her ear. Hey, little assistant, I'm still in the channel. Isn't it not very good for you to talk about me in front of me? Besides, am I not serious normally? That's called my true nature. Quote. Daisy's small face was slightly red and she spat slightly. After Li Shu teased the little assistant, he went to the window at the side and pulled down the blinds slightly. Suddenly, he could see the outside through the gap of the blinds. There was a long corridor and rows of doors on the opposite side. Through the previous three-dimensional map, he knew that there was a long corridor outside. There were rooms on both sides of the corridor, similar to the structure of a hotel. At this moment, ding! The sound of the elevator arriving sounded. Li Shu's eyes lit up. The main character was here. The drop began. The elevator door slowly opened, revealing a young man in sunglasses with a cold face. It was Daredevil. As Daredevil walked out, doors opened one after another. One by one, burly men walked out from inside, each holding a machete or a gun. Seeing Daredevil, these ferocious criminals all had solemn expressions. They obviously knew his fierce reputation. Daredevil didn't move, and the criminals didn't move either. There seemed to be a stalemate. Seeing this, Li Shu curled his lips. These criminals were really thin dogs. They didn't move. This wouldn't do. If both sides didn't fight, how could they drop anything? He lowered his voice and shouted, "Kill him." The crowd, who were already tense, became agitated. Kill him. Words fanned actions. Everyone's head was hot. Boom boom boom. Everyone rushed towards Daredevil with knives and guns. They instantly fought with Daredevil. Relying on the narrow terrain, superb fighting skills, and extraordinary sensory abilities, Daredevil methodically fought one criminal after another. Snatching knives, smashing people, snatching guns, unloading guns, smashing people, and other actions were done in one go. If he encountered someone shooting, he would put the criminal in front of him horizontally. In such a narrow place and with so many people, the actual use of guns was not as good as a short knife. As Daredevil continued to move forward, one criminal after another lay on the ground in pain. More than a dozen, more than 20. Doors were affected by the battle, knocked open, and sent flying. Although he only had the physique of a normal human, Daredevil was still able to suppress this group of criminals. However, the injuries on his body continued to increase. Blood flowed out, and his whole body seemed to be bathed in blood. His whole body was blood red, and it was a shocking sight. In the end, he even began to pant, and his exhaustion was obvious. However, he still fought meticulously, beating the enemies until they were in pain. Daredevil, who didn't have a cheat physique, was able to suppress so many criminals. He had almost reached the limit. His fighting skills were almost at the peak. Most importantly, the other party had a strong willpower. Even though various injuries appeared on his body, the sharp pain constantly warned his brain, and his strength began to show signs of exhaustion, Daredevil had no intention of retreating at all. He moved forward bravely. Daredevil might not have as strong a physique as other superheroes, but he was undoubtedly a man with an iron will. Li Shu was also quite impressed. However, he still shook his head slightly. An ordinary body is ultimately not enough. A will of steel, but without a body of steel, there's still a limit. In the meantime, he frowned slightly. Why hasn't it dropped anything yet? His mouth seemed to have been blessed. The next moment, one of the criminals dropped a white-grade light ball. Li Shu's eyes instantly lit up. Before he could finish being happy. Immediately after, Daredevil dropped 2 balls of light at the same time, 2 black iron-colored balls of light. Li Shu widened his eyes slightly and clicked his tongue. If it doesn't drop, then it won't drop at all. If it does, then a few of them will appear. His eyes were filled with surprise and joy. Ding! The criminal dropped the exquisite bedroom technique, whiteboard elementary level. Do you want to collect it? Ding! Daredevil dropped top level combat experience, black iron medium level. Do you wish to receive it? Ding! Daredevil dropped iron fighting will, black iron high level. Do you want to collect it? Li Shu had a strange look in her eyes when she saw the items that had been dropped. Good lord, there was an indecent item mixed into the decent item. What the hell was exquisite bedroom technique? This was the first time he had dropped something like this. Daredevil had dropped 2 black iron levels in a row. Not bad. At the same time, the relevant information also appeared. Exquisite bedroom technique. Exquisite bedroom technique, proficient in the physiological knowledge of both romances, can make you more like a fish in water, like rain. Top-level combat experience. Powerful combat experience, can allow you to face any situation in an intense battle and fully exert 100% of your strength. Iron fighting will. Even if you are seriously injured, you can still rely on your strong will to continue fighting. The impact of injuries on your combat power is reduced by 50%. In terms of combat experience, he only had the rough combat experience of the rhinoceros people. Although it was not bad, it was still inferior to a real expert. Therefore, Daredevil's top-level combat experience was very suitable for him. Moreover, it would double the critical hit. He did not know what it would become. Finally, there was the iron will. With the strong human will, it could reduce the impact of injuries on his combat power by 50%. It could only be said that Daredevil was indeed very powerful. Li Shu felt that the bedroom technique, a light ball that could allow him to learn rich knowledge, was also not bad. He silently said in his heart, receive. Ding! Received, exquisite bedroom technique, white elementary level. Triggered tenfold critical hit. Received, master level bedroom technique, white high level. Quote. Ding! Received, top level combat experience, black iron medium level. Triggered 7-fold critical hit. Received, powerful combat technique. Bronze elementary level. Ding! Received, iron fighting will, black iron high level. Triggered 100-fold critical hit. Received, unlimited fighting will. Bronze limit. Seeing the last critical hit, Li Shu slightly widened his eyes. Good guy. This time, it actually triggered a 100-fold critical hit. A bronze limit light ball was blasted out of him. The relevant information also poured into his mind. Master level bedroom technique, black iron high level, you have skills that have almost reached perfection. You are a master of this path. May you and your partner climb to paradise. Those who have used it say it is good. The next moment, a large amount of experience poured into Li Shu's mind. There was an extremely rich knowledge of the physiology of both romances, as well as various skills. Li Shu revealed a smile. Powerful combat technique, bronze elementary level, you have combat techniques that surpass the limit. Every combat technique can unleash 150% of your strength. There was also a large amount of combat experience and powerful combat techniques. The rich combat experience allowed him to deal with almost all combat situations. As for the powerful combat techniques, they had already surpassed ordinary combat techniques and were considered transcendent skills. It was a transcendent skill that was comprehended after mastering ordinary combat techniques. To be able to directly increase one's combat strength by 50%, it was indeed quite powerful. Li Shu's gaze fell on the last ability, unlimited fighting will, which was a 100-fold critical hit. His eyes immediately lit up. Unrestricted battle will bronze limit, you have an amazing battle will. Unless you die, no matter how serious your injuries are, it will not affect your combat strength. When you are seriously injured, your potential will be stimulated and your combat strength will increase by 20%. Seeing this, Li Shu could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Good lord. Even if he was seriously injured, his combat strength would not be affected. As long as he was still breathing, he would be able to maintain a 100% perfect combat state. This ability really shocked Li Shu a little. After all, when the body was injured and tired, it would affect one's combat strength. This was something everyone knew. However, he did not expect this ability to be so abnormal. In addition, after being seriously injured, there would be an increase in combat strength by 20%. The more he fought, the braver he became. The next moment, he felt a strange feeling surge into his body. This time, he had gained a lot. Li Shu could not help but grin silently. He looked at Daredevil, who was fighting hard outside, and his gaze softened. This kid's ability had given him so many things. Outside. Bang bang bang. A group of people were still fighting in close quarters. Their fists hit their flesh. The criminals kept screaming from being beaten. On Daredevil's body, sweat and blood flowed down together. His face was full of fatigue. However, his combat strength was still maintained at a very impressive level. The criminals who were fighting with him all showed a trace of fear on their faces. Is this guy a monster who doesn't feel pain or fatigue? Quote. Shish asterisk T. After fighting for so long and bleeding so much, why hasn't he fallen yet? Quote. How can we defeat this monster? Li Shu understood that this was because of the other party's steel-like willpower. His steel-like willpower was already so fierce. The unrestricted battle will of a 100-fold critical hit would only be more terrifying. The perfect state would last indefinitely until death. In the distance, Daisy could not help but sigh. This guy's willpower is really amazing. Right at this moment, behind Daredevil, a person got up from the crowd and rushed towards Daredevil with a dagger. Daisy saw this through the camera and covered her mouth in shock. Li Shu, on the other hand, was very calm. Although Daredevil was blind, his perception of behind him was far better than that of ordinary people. Sure enough, Daredevil's ears moved slightly. He immediately turned around and accurately grabbed the other party's knife and smashed it into the other party's stomach. Pung! He directly smashed that person to the ground. His movements were smooth and fluid. It was as if he had a pair of eyes on his back. Li Shu narrowed his eyes slightly. Daredevil's perception ability is basically an extraordinary ability. His meticulous capture of sounds and smells has reached an amazing level. Although he didn't have eyes, his hearing and perception system could draw an image of his surroundings in his mind. The closer he got, the more accurate it was. Question mark. To tell the truth, he also wants Daredevil's extraordinary perception system very much. This extraordinary perception system allowed him to accurately control his surroundings, especially during combat. It was as if he had another 360-degree view without any blind spots. At the moment ideographic period. The battle ahead was nearing its end. Daredevil knocked over a person with a stick and came to the door in the deepest part of the corridor. He used the stick to sweep the door and found the position of the door lock. Pung! With one strike, the door was smashed open. He walked in. Another series of banging sounds could be heard from inside. Li Shu walked out of a room at the side of the corridor. Suddenly, the smell of blood entered his nose. He looked at the criminals who were bleeding on the ground. Li Shu shook his head. I've never been able to see such a bloody and violent scene. I can't bear to hear other people's screams. He raised his hands and pressed the middle two fingers on his wrists. Chi chi chi. Beams of cobwebs split out and shot accurately at the necks of the criminals on the ground. The criminals felt the coolness on their necks and felt a chill run down their spines. A creepy feeling surged into their hearts. The shadow of death instantly enveloped everyone. They opened their mouths to beg for mercy. So stop screaming. Li Shu was serious and exerted force with his hand. A terrifying force erupted from the cobwebs and rushed towards the criminals' necks. All the criminals widened their eyes and looked at Li Shu with despair in their eyes. They thought Daredevil was scary enough. But they didn't expect another king of hell would appear behind them. Crack! 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 A series of soft sounds could be heard. Immediately, their heads drooped on the ground and their eyes completely lost their light. The corridor outside suddenly fell silent. A pin drop could be heard. Seeing this, Li Shu was slightly satisfied. Finally, I feel a little better. At the same time, he was very satisfied with the strengthened version of spider ability. Just this super multi-line operation was already very impressive. On the other side, the little assistant's face twitched when she heard her boss's words and actions. She realized that her boss was probably the most violent and terrifying person now. The little assistant's face was scared and she said weakly, "Boss, are you a pervert?" The corner of Li Shu's mouth twitched and his face darkened. "Tonight, you can try it on my bed." The little assistant heard Li Shu's indecent words and the fear on her face disappeared. She blushed and choked Li Shu. "I'm very powerful. I'm just afraid that you won't be able to take it." As she said this, she snorted angrily. Immediately, she closed the conversation channel and her cheeks were burning red. When the embarrassment faded, the little assistant gritted her teeth and said angrily, "Really, the boss is too indecent. When I have enough money, I'll run away. I won't do this illegal job anymore." Quote. Li Shu was about to retaliate when he realized that the channel was closed. The corner of his mouth twitched. "This chick is really stubborn." He jumped up. His feet landed on the ceiling and he walked upside down to the innermost door. With his high agility, his footsteps were extremely light and almost didn't make a sound. The wind blew open the half-closed door in the depths. Daredevil was fighting a man and the battle was a little anxious. This was because the previous battle had consumed a lot of Daredevil's stamina and caused a lot of injuries. If it wasn't for his iron will, Daredevil would have fallen long ago. It was already very good to be able to fight back and forth with the other party. Bang bang bang. Injuries kept appearing on both of their bodies. The enemy's veins were bulging. "Why aren't you down yet?" Quote. What greeted him was Daredevil's punch. Bang. The enemy felt dizzy. At this moment, a ball of light fell from each of them. Ding. The criminal leader dropped 36 types of criminal methods and skills white high level. "Do you want to withdraw?" Quote. Ding. Daredevil dropped. Li Shu's eyes widened slightly and were filled with surprise. He saw the items dropped by the criminal leader. Li Shu's face twitched. What are these criminals writing on the ground? Bedroom techniques. Crime methods and skills. Li Shu was speechless. As expected of a criminal, the items dropped were so in line with their identities. However, forget about the bedroom techniques. What the hell were these crime methods and skills? He wasn't a criminal, so he didn't need any crime methods or skills. But immediately, the items dropped by Daredevil made Li Shu's eyes widen slightly, and joy appeared in his eyes. Ding. Daredevil dropped. Daredevil's strong perception ability, bronze elementary level. Do you want to withdraw it? Quote. Daredevil's strong perception ability. Daredevil is blind. Due to personal opportunities, he has obtained a powerful and extraordinary perception ability. Through his hearing and perception system, he can automatically generate images in his mind. Seeing this, Li Shu's heart bloomed with joy. Daredevil had really dropped too many things for him this time. He didn't even forget to drop him a super perception ability that he had been longing for. Li Shu hurriedly said in his heart, "Receive." Ding. Received 36 crime methods and skills whiteboard medium level. Triggered 5 times critical hit. Received 72 crime methods and skills. Black iron elementary level. Quote. Ding. Received Daredevil's strong perception ability bronze elementary level. Triggered 20 times critical hit. Received super perception ability bronze high level. Quote. In an instant, a large amount of crime-related knowledge and experience poured into his mind. There were telecommunications fraud, daggers, firearms, and other criminal methods. They were not of much use to Li Shu. However, some things made Li Shu's eyes light up. In order to commit better crimes, the criminal leader was proficient in several languages. After a critical hit, he immediately mastered the languages of 12 countries. He was basically proficient in the languages of the mainstream countries. Other than that, there were some methods of torture. This was still okay. After all, Li Shu could also interrogate the criminal or something. Other than that, there were also small skills such as picking locks. A small skill like picking locks was still quite a convenient skill. After all, it might be useful at any time. Li Shu was slightly surprised. He didn't expect this criminal leader to be so versatile. He was proficient in many languages and had mastered various core skills. If he didn't become a criminal, he would be an inspirational role model. No wonder he could become the leader. Next, a strange power surged into his body and quickly strengthened his perception system. His perception system began to evolve rapidly. Super perception ability. Your perception ability has reached an unbelievable level, giving birth to a new super perception ability. It will greatly strengthen your hearing and perception system, and accurately map the surrounding environment in your mind. If you close your eyes, this mapping will be even more detailed. His mind moved. Super perception ability was activated. His hearing and other sensory systems were super strengthened. The special power of perception spread out. Everything around him was reflected in his mind. A 3D image was formed. His perception ability could extend to a range of 30 meters. As he closed his eyes, his perception range increased to 50 meters, and his perception became more detailed. He could even clearly feel the patterns on the wall. He could feel every injury on the two people fighting in the room. Li Shu opened her eyes. Her eyes were filled with joy. This perception ability was too strong. It completely belonged to the category of super ability. With this ability, he really had no blind spots in his 360-degree view. He couldn't help but smile. In the room, after the criminal leader took a solid punch, the battle basically came to an end. The criminal leader was dizzy. Daredevil took advantage of the victory and chased after him. He elbowed and attacked with his knees. The criminal's face was covered in blood. He was sent flying and smashed into the wall. The criminal leader lay on the ground, unwilling to give up. I didn't expect that even though I was so careful, you still found a clue and found me. What I didn't expect even more was that not only did a monster like you come today, but an even more terrifying death god also came. The criminal leader coughed up blood. It seems that I won't be able to survive today. Through the camera, he could clearly see the actions of the smiling masked man. The other party was really going all out. He dealt with many of his men cleanly. His eyes were bloodshot. However, even if I die, I won't die in the hands of you monsters. With that, he picked up the dagger and directly killed himself. Daredevil was stunned when he heard the other party's words. He didn't have time to stop the other party's actions. Suddenly, he felt that his surroundings were incomparably silent. At some point, the moaning completely disappeared. He quickly turned and rushed into the corridor. There was dead silence, not a single sound could be heard. It was so quiet that Daredevil felt a chill down his spine. Daredevil murmured, "What happened?" He quickly leaned over and touched the people around him. No breathing, and still no breathing. Everyone was dead. They all died from their necks being twisted by a huge force. A breeze blew past Daredevil. At this moment, he felt bone-chilling cold and his hands and feet were cold. Who was it, and when, had killed everyone, he had no idea at all. Daredevil swallowed. Daredevil, who had always been fearless in the face of danger, also felt inexplicably scared at this moment. He had never noticed that there was an extremely powerful existence. The other party was like a ghost, standing in the void. He came lightly and left without a trace. However, Daredevil didn't know that the scene was actually even more frightening. On the ceiling 3 meters away from him, a masked man was hanging upside down, motionless, staring at him with dark eyes. Through the camera, the assistant, Darcy, saw everything. She saw Daredevil's actions and then looked at Li Shu standing upside down. If Daredevil suddenly regained his light and saw the ghost-like boss above his head, he would probably be scared to death. She swallowed. But to be honest, the boss is indeed fierce. Even Daredevil, a superhero with excellent perception, didn't notice the boss's existence. My boss is the real monster. Daredevil stood in place for a while. Then, he returned to the leader's room. Because the abducted children were still among them. Li Shu stood in place, closed his eyes, activated super perception, and scanned his surroundings. After confirming that there were no living criminals, he prepared to leave. Daredevil returned to his room. Using his powerful perception ability, he took out a hard drive from the computer. He knew that there were surveillance cameras in these places, so he took out the hard drive. He wanted to know who killed these people. Who was so terrifying that even he didn't notice. After finding the hard drive, he knocked on the surrounding walls and quickly found the dark room. He carried the children out and walked out along the corridor. He walked to a place. A child stopped. What's wrong? Daredevil asked. The child said, I think I saw someone greeting me in front of the window in the room. But it disappeared in the blink of an eye. I didn't see it clearly. Quote. Daredevil's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. The other party disappeared from the child's sight. The window was not far from him, but he did not perceive the other party at all. Who was the other party? How could they do it so quietly? The child pulled Daredevil. Let's go. Daredevil quickly left with the child. On the bus, Li Shu pulled the boom and stood there. Not bad. Li Shu did not go back. He chose to take the bus. After all, it was more comfortable to take the bus. Moreover, it was not bad to look at the scenery of New York. He had not rested much since he came to this world. He had not taken a good look at the world's financial center, the international metropolis. Now was the time. Li Shu stood on the bus. He did not attract much attention. The main reason was that there were basically no photos of his last battle. The images from the public camera would not be made public. Therefore, not many people in New York knew Li Shu. Moreover, Li Shu had fought in public once. Although he was famous, he was not very popular. He might only be a little popular in the local community. However, this was good. No one would come up to disturb him. Li Shu looked out of the car window. Tall buildings stood tall and straight. Soon, a forest park appeared in front of him. It was lush. It was Central Park, the largest urban park in the world. Next to Central Park, an incomparably tall building stood there. Compared to the surrounding buildings, it really stood out like a crane among chickens. Central Park Tower. The tallest residential building in the world. They could overlook Central Park and even see the Statue of Liberty in the distance. Most of New York's scenery could be seen. You can even see the Arc of the Earth. It was a luxury mansion worth $250 million United States dollars. It had 7 bedrooms, 11 bathrooms, 2 fully equipped kitchens, and a private dining room. She looked at the large flat apartment. Li Shu's eyes lit up. This is where people should live. When I have enough cash, I want to buy a floor here. Definitely, the current him was not worthy. The 200,000 to 300,000 yuan in his hands was not even a drop in the ocean. Right at this moment, someone gently patted his right shoulder. The next moment, a beautiful face appeared before his eyes. Her eyes were sparkling, and her smile was sweet. The girl greeted him softly, "Hi." The other party's appearance made Li Shu's eyes light up. He had to admit that the girl opposite him was very beautiful and had a refreshing temperament. She gave people the feeling of first love. Definitely. To Li Shu, every beauty could be his first love. However, Li Shu was sure that he had never seen her before. Single quote. Although he did not know her, she was a beauty. He had to give her enough respect and climb up the pole to improve their relationship. He smiled and said, "You're very beautiful. It's rare to see you. I think you look a little familiar. We've seen each other before, right?" Quote. The girl covered her mouth and laughed. "If I'm really that beautiful, would you forget that you've seen me before? Or maybe I'm not that beautiful, so you've seen me before and don't have a deep impression of me. No matter what you choose, you're lying." Quote. She wrinkled her nose and then put on a little fox's smile. Lying is not a good habit. Seeing the girl so astutely expose the loophole in his words, Li Shu smiled and shook his head. The girl opposite him was smarter than he had imagined. The girl smiled and said, "I watched the Lizardmen last time. You're a hero. So I'm very happy to meet you again." Quote. She stretched out her slender and white hand. "My name is Gwen. Nice to meet you, big hero." Hearing the other party's name and glancing at the other party's height and figure, Li Shu smiled in his heart. She still wanted to watch and be a bystander. It was a pity that the other party's name exposed her identity. The outside world did not know the identity of Ghost Spider, but he knew. This girl still wanted to lie. However, Li Shu did not expose the other party. He held the other party's soft hand. "Li Shu, nice to meet you too, big beauty." It had to be said that Gwen's small hand was really comfortable to touch. It was slightly warm and soft. A girl's hand should be so beautiful. After a while, Gwen said with a smile, can you let go of my hand? Li Shu was thick-skinned. It's mainly because the car just turned a corner. I want to help you. Gwen's eyes smiled into crescents. Then I have to thank you. Li Shu let go of Gwen's soft hand and the corners of his mouth curled up. You're welcome. I'm willing to help a beautiful person. Gwen smiled. You're quite funny. It's quite interesting. Gwen had never seen such a shameless and confident person, but she did not feel disgusted at all. The other party's defeated figure last time left a good impression on her, causing her to have a good impression and curiosity about Li Shu from the beginning. In addition, the other party's handsome and righteous appearance made her preconceived and brought the other party into the first impression of a hero. Gwen retracted her hand and took out her mobile phone. I'll add your contact information. She winked playfully. If I meet a hooligan next time, can I call a big hero to solve it? After all, I'm so delicate and weak. Quote. Li Shu smiled in his heart when he heard this. Of course. A hero saving a beauty is my favorite thing to do. Immediately, the two of them exchanged numbers. At this moment, Li Shu's mobile phone vibrated. A text message popped up on it and a few words appeared. Come back quickly. Daisy. There was a hint of anxiety in the tone. Seeing the message, Li Shu's eyes narrowed slightly. He got off at the next stop and smiled at Gavin. See you next time. Gavin smiled and waved. Next time I'm in trouble, I'll call you. Don't ignore me. He brushed past Gavin. There was a pleasant fragrance, like the elegant fragrance of flowers. Clang. Li Shu walked down and the door closed behind him. The smile on his face faded and his expression froze. He wanted to call Daisy, but he couldn't get through. Why can't I get through to her phone? What happened? Li Shu frowned slightly. He quickly walked into an alley. Then, with a leap, he sped toward the shop. The current Daisy hadn't awakened her ability yet, and she wasn't the shield agent with rich combat experience. So the little assistant basically didn't have any ability to protect herself now. On the other side, inside a room, Daredevil found a friend, Black Panther, and asked him to help watch the video. At this moment, Black Panther hadn't inherited his father's throne yet. He was still studying in New York and would usually do some chivalrous things. That was why he got to know Daredevil. Soon, the video was played. Black Panther also saw everything on the screen. He kept fast-forwarding the video of the corridor, searching for the person who did it. After a while, Black Panther suddenly said, I seem to have found it. After you left the corridor, a person appeared. Who? Daredevil asked in a low voice. Just as Black Panther was about to say something, he suddenly saw the person's hands shoot out many cobwebs, which accurately stuck to the neck of a criminal. Then, the person gently pulled with his hand, and 30 to 40 criminals' necks tilted and they fell to the ground, losing all signs of life. Seeing this, Black Panther's pupils shrank and he sucked in a breath of cold air. Whether it was the coolness of shooting cobwebs or the terrifying strength that directly broke dozens of people's necks with a gentle pull, Black Panther was extremely shocked. This godlike skill and power was truly out of the ordinary. The other party was a Spider-Man. However, as far as he knew, spider ability users didn't have such terrifying means. Hearing his friend's gasp, Daredevil quickly asked, what's wrong? What did he do to make you so shocked? Quote. Black Panther gulped and calmed down a little. After you walked into the room, I saw a man with a smiley face mask appear. His hands shot out many cobwebs, and each cobweb seemed to be equipped with a tracker. They accurately grabbed the neck of each criminal. Oh my god, this guy's control over cobweb has reached an unimaginable level. Then, with a slight pull, the necks of so many criminals were broken at the same time. He broke the necks of dozens of people in an instant. How terrifying is his strength? Also, there are no external wounds on their necks. It is enough to show that his control over the strength of each cobweb is so precise that it is appalling. Daredevil also took a deep breath when he heard Black Panther's description. He was overwhelmed with shock. Daredevil was in disbelief. How could this be? Is there really someone who can do this? Quote. Black Panther sighed. It happened in reality, and it happened around you. The video was still playing. Suddenly, Black Panther saw the next scene and felt a chill run down his spine. Daredevil walked out, listened carefully to everything around him, and groped the people around him. However, he didn't find anything. He even walked 10 meters away and didn't find anything. And at the moment, less than a few meters above his head, the smiley face masked man was hanging upside down, staring at him motionlessly. He was like an upside-down vampire, a ghost. This scene was particularly strange. The corner of Black Panther's mouth twitched. Do you know where that guy was when you came out? Daredevil frowned. Where? Black Panther said faintly, right above your head, hanging upside down, staring at you. Hearing this, Daredevil's scalp went numb, and cold sweat broke out on his back. Inside the shop, the big-breasted girl, Daisy, hugged her notebook in fear and curled up on the sofa. Outside the house, there was a loud rumbling sound. The house was trembling slightly. Through the window, one could see, outside the house, a huge robot was wreaking havoc. The robot was about 2 or 3 stories tall. At the same time, a man in a steel battle suit was stopping the huge robot. In front of the huge robot, the Iron Man looked a little miniature. Daisy's little face was full of fear. Boss, come back quickly. Your assistant is almost gone. Quote. Daisy also wanted to call Li Shu to know his location. Unfortunately, the huge robot released some kind of special radio wave that greatly interfered with the communication and network at the scene. As a result, Daisy couldn't get through to Li Shu at all. It took her a lot of effort to send out a message. However, she didn't know when Li Shu would come back. She could only hope that he would arrive before she died. Daisy's face was sad. I haven't even started earning money and I'm going to lose my life. At this moment, the huge monster swept a fist in her direction. Seeing this, Daisy's face turned pale and she screamed at the top of her lungs, "Boss!" On the other side, Li Shu was flying between the tall buildings like a bolt of lightning. Others could hardly see his appearance. With his high-speed movement, he soon arrived at the rooftop of his shop. At the same time, a loud rumbling sound entered his ears, and the buildings were trembling slightly. His gaze fell. A huge robot was wreaking havoc on the streets, smashing cars into meat patties. The Iron Man flew in the air and fought with the other party. However, the Iron Man was slightly inferior at the moment. The huge robot swept its hand at the Iron Man and sent him flying. The huge hand didn't stop and swept in the direction of his shop. At the same time, a young girl's scream pierced the clouds. Boss! Li Shu raised his eyebrows in anger and exploded with all his strength. He activated all his enhancement skills. His eyes were slightly red and the veins on his body were slightly bulging. The extreme anger of the rhinoceros man. A powerful fighting technique. Get lost. His voice was shocking and ear-splitting. He shot out at a terrifying speed and his foot was like a mountain-splitting axe as it chopped towards the robot's huge hand. The air exploded. The momentum was astonishing. It was as if a god had descended. The surrounding people were all attracted by the momentum of this kick and were shocked. Shish asterisk T, is this a human's foot? I feel like it's a tomahawk cannonball. Is this kick something that a human can kick out? The air exploded. The sound is like an explosion. Quote. Who can take this kick? People can't take it, but that doesn't mean that other existences can't. This kick is aimed at the giant robot. Although this kick is a bit loud, the other party is a big steel guy that's dozens of times bigger than him. I don't think this kick will have any effect. Quote. Iron Man, who had fallen to the ground, saw Li Shu's kick and gasped slightly. Is this a kick that a human can make? Other than the Hulk, he had never seen anyone else make such a shocking kick. Iron Man's face showed a trace of hesitation. Does he want to use this kick to stop the giant robot's hand? Can this be done? Quote. After all, in his opinion, the difference in size between the two was too great. Moreover, the enemy was made of alloy steel and was very strong. Even if he fought, it would be very difficult for him. Li Shu's foot smashed into the giant robot's arm. The difference between a human foot and the giant robot arm was like the difference between a toy car and a big truck. It seemed that the toy car would not cause any damage to the big truck at all. Seeing the contact between the foot and the giant arm, everyone had the same thought in their minds. Will it work? Boom! A terrifying force erupted from Li Shu's foot. It easily tore the giant robot's arm and smashed it into the road. There was a loud bang. A huge pit was formed in the middle of the road and dust flew everywhere. The surrounding people were stunned when they saw this scene. The scene was almost dead silent. Only dust was flying in the air. In the shop, Daisy looked at the approaching giant arm and her heart was filled with extreme fear. There were even tears in her eyes. Just as she was feeling a little desperate, a deafening roar instantly pulled her out of despair. It's the boss. Her eyes widened. Then, she still didn't understand the situation. She found that the giant arm was shot down by a rapidly shooting figure and smashed to the ground, raising dust. Daisy watched as the threat was smashed into the ground. Her mouth was slightly open and she was stunned for a moment. Then she reacted and joy exploded in her heart. Daisy. Boss. The boss is back. Quote. The shadow of death had yet to disperse. Darcy sniffed and said pitifully, fortunately, the boss is back. Otherwise, I would be gone. On the road, Li Shu walked out from the flying dust. When Iron Man saw Li Shu's figure, he swallowed a mouthful of saliva and the corner of his mouth twitched. He didn't expect that someone with a normal appearance would possess such terrifying physical strength. It was normal for the Hulk to have such terrifying strength. After all, he was so big. However, Li Shu, who had an ordinary physique, actually possessed extremely terrifying strength. This was truly shocking to Iron Man. He even suspected that if Thor did not use Thor's hammer, he would not be a match for the man in front of him. Li Shu looked at the giant robot coldly. Without saying anything, he moved again. Whoosh! He shot out and threw a punch at his opponent. The giant robot hurriedly punched out a giant fist to parry. The giant fist and the pocket-sized fist collided. Boom! The mechanical arm exploded, sending fragments flying in all directions. However, the fist of flesh and blood was completely unharmed. When the surrounding people saw this scene, their scalps went numb. Li Shu did not stop. He landed on the ground and turned around. He raised his hand to release Cobweb and grabbed the giant robot's head. He pulled hard and his entire body shot towards the giant head like a cannonball. His hard knees rushed towards the lump of steel. Boom! There was a loud sound. It was as if he had smashed a watermelon. Li Shu broke through the giant steel head and landed on the ground. The giant robot that stood proudly collapsed with a loud bang, and the ground trembled. The set of movements was smooth and clean. In the blink of an eye, the originally arrogant giant robot was destroyed. When the surrounding people saw this scene, they felt a little dazed. They felt that everything had happened too quickly and that it was a little illusory. They looked at the back of the tall and straight figure. Under the sunlight, it was shining brightly, as if the back of a god was facing everyone. Li Shu did not stop after landing. With a few strides, he quickly rushed back into his shop. The main reason was that he was a little worried about Darcy. He did not know if she was injured. He rushed to the partition. Darcy threw away her notebook and pounced on Li Shu, hugging him tightly. Boss. You scared me to death. I thought I was going to die. Quote. The signal was disrupted. I couldn't get through to you. You scared me to death. Fortunately, you came, boss. When you arrived, I was so excited that I was about to cry. Boo-hoo. Darcy was like a little beast, whimpering a few times. She sniffed. Although you're old and frivolous, boss, you're really reliable at critical moments. Li Shu listened to the first part, but when he heard the latter part, he felt that something was wrong. The corner of his mouth twitched. But to be honest, being hugged by Darcy was really comfortable. After all, she was a big-breasted and plump girl. Her figure was really good. Being hugged by such a person was the enjoyment of life. Li Shu's original worry disappeared, leaving only a trace of charm in her heart. The delicate body of a big-breasted beautiful girl, YYDS. Li Shu hugged Darcy. It's okay. As long as the boss is here, the little assistant will be fine. As he spoke, he touched Darcy's head. After a while, Darcy's faint voice sounded. Boss, how long do you want to hug me? A pair of gloomy eyes stared at him. Li Shu coughed and let go of Darcy. Isn't this to soothe your emotions? Darcy adjusted her collar and rolled her eyes. Is it comfortable? Li Shu grinned. It's really comfortable hugging the little assistant. She's meaty, warm, and fragrant. His face turned serious, and he said seriously, Little assistant, I think you're very good. I want to promote your position. The little assistant's eyes lit up. Really? Then what position are you going to give me? Quote. I'm going to promote you from a little assistant to a high-level position of personal secretary. You can enjoy half the treatment of a lady boss. Darcy's expression froze when she heard that. Li Shu still said seriously, how about it? Do you want to consider it? Quote. Darcy blushed when she heard the word, personal. Immediately, her ears turned red, her face was hot, and her eyes were slightly on fire. She spat. Crawl. When I've saved enough money, I'll escape from this demon's den. Quote. She snorted angrily and quickly ran back to the sofa. Her figure was plump, and she trotted back. She curled up on the sofa and turned on the computer. Li Shu looked at the little face that was half red from embarrassment and half anger, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. He turned and went downstairs. He looked at the light ball that had fallen not far away. It was the light ball that Iron Man had dropped when he was sent flying. Because he was worried about the little assistant's safety, he quickly finished the battle and ran back to the shop. He didn't have time to collect it or even check what it was. He checked the drop record. Ding. Dropped Iron Man's. Ding. Dropped Iron Man's mechanical and biological knowledge fragment black iron medium level. Do you want to pick it up? Quote. Iron Man's knowledge. It was just a fragment that could reach black iron medium level. This meant that Iron Man's knowledge was indeed very valuable. Receive. Li Shu said in his heart. Ding. Picked up Iron Man's mechanical and biological knowledge fragment. Triggered 30 times critical hit. Obtained most of Iron Man's mechanical and biological knowledge bronze limit. Quote. Hearing this, Li Shu was slightly surprised. Good lord. Most of his knowledge had reached the bronze limit. In other words, all of Iron Man's knowledge should be at the silver level. This was the highest level he had come into contact with so far. But it made sense. After all of Iron Man's armor and weapons combined were almost comparable to the Hulk. Definitely. This was only Iron Man's current knowledge value. As Iron Man grew, the battle suits he developed would become stronger and stronger, and the value of his knowledge would become higher and higher. A large amount of mechanical and biological knowledge poured into Li Shu's mind. The knowledge was so vast that Li Shu felt that his head was slightly swollen. He quickly flipped through the knowledge in his mind. His eyes lit up slightly. This contained most of Iron Man's battlesuit manufacturing knowledge, as well as the manufacturing of the palladium arc reactor. There were also some of Iron Man's achievements in biology. Compared to the knowledge of mechanical energy, Iron Man's achievements in biology were a little weaker. However, it was enough to beat most of the biology experts. After all, he was a genius in the level universe. He flipped through the manufacturing of the steel battle suits in his mind. Li Shu thought of his little assistant. The little assistant didn't have awakening ability yet. Her strength was too weak. The steel battle suit could make up for the little assistant's shortcomings. Other than that, the biological knowledge in his mind could also be used. Iron Man's knowledge of the human body and his knowledge of super ability also surpassed most experts. Therefore, he could use this knowledge to help the little assistant stimulate her ability and train her ability. The little assistant was a vibe girl. The upper limit of her ability was very high. If she grew up a little, she could easily collapse a building. Shatter someone's heart from a distance. If she grew up completely, she could even cause a super large earthquake or even a star explosion. If she was trained properly, the vibe ability that would drop would be a powerful attack. Also, vibe ability could also form a spiritual shield that could defend against mental attacks. It was also a powerful mental defense method. Li Shu was very satisfied with the items dropped by Iron Man. As expected of the number one person in science and technology on Earth. He immediately turned his head to look outside his shop, wanting to see if it had been damaged. Fortunately, he came back in time, and his shop was not damaged at all. On the rooftop not far away, Gavin, wearing a hooded spider suit, stood there. As soon as Li Shu left, she received news that there was a battle between Transcendents on the street and hurried over. In the end, they saw the scene of Li Shu crushing the giant robot. Even Iron Man was swept away. In the face of such a huge robot, humans were like thumb-sized toys. In the end, the disparity was so great. That man tore apart the giant robot in a few moves. It was extremely easy. His strength and speed had reached a level that left her in the dust. If a mutant like her was considered a monster among humans, then he would be considered a monster among monsters. The amazing scene made Gwen's mouth slightly open. Oh my god, this guy is too strong. They're both spider ability users, he's ridiculously strong. Why do I feel like I'm a failure? Gavin's small face was slightly bitter. Gavin looked at Li Shu's back and her eyes lit up slightly. However, he's really too handsome. At this point, a smile appeared on the pretty face under the mask. At this time, Iron Man flew over and landed beside Li Shu. The mask automatically closed, revealing a somewhat pale face. Iron Man's approach allowed Li Shu to see the other party's steel battlesuit even more closely. It was full of metallic luster and flashed with a hard cold color. The steel battlesuit that he watched on TV in his previous life appeared in front of Li Shu's eyes at a close distance. It made him feel very strange. There was a feeling of paying homage to the past, to his youth. There was also a feeling of his previous life completely disappearing, as if it was a lifetime ago. Seeing the steel battlesuit with his own eyes, Li Shu had to say that it was indeed handsome. It was worthy of being something that once swept the world. Iron Man smiled and said, "Thank you very much. If it weren't for you, this big guy would probably have caused more damage. You have a kind heart." Li Shu shook his head and laughed. "I just came back to protect my own shop." Iron Man's eyes narrowed slightly. "Brother, you look a little familiar. I think I've seen you somewhere before." Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration. "Oh right, you're the one who defeated the lizard man before." He grinned. "I didn't expect to meet you here. It's really fate. You've stopped the disaster twice. You're really a superhero." Upstairs, Daisy leaned against the window and heard Iron Man's voice. She muttered softly, "The boss is definitely a superhero. He's always taken care of bad guys." Immediately, she thought of something and said weakly, "Other than being a little bloody and violent, and shivering. Other than that, he's a standard superhero." Daisy's tone was certain. Downstairs, Iron Man reached out his hand and shook Li Shu's hand. Li Shu smiled. "By the way, what's going on with this big guy?" Iron Man shook his head. "I don't know either. I haven't found any relevant clues yet. I'm going to pull it back for research later and see if I can find the source of this incident." As he said that, Iron Man took out a business card from somewhere and handed it to Li Shu. "This is my business card. My phone number is on it. If you have any problems, you can call me." Li Shu took the business card. "Okay. Iron Man, see you next time." After saying that, he flew out quickly. Li Shu stood on the spot and looked at Iron Man's back, frowning slightly. Just now, he saw that the other party's expression was a little strange. He activated his super perception ability and found that there was something wrong with the other party. Through super perception, he could clearly see black lines appearing on the man's chest. According to the knowledge he had just obtained in his mind, plus his understanding of the plot, he understood that Iron Man was suffering from palladium poisoning. Thinking about the timeline, it was indeed time for Iron Man to be suffering from palladium poisoning. After all, the plot of Avengers Alliance had already passed. It had been several years since Iron Man made the first palladium arc reactor. Iron Man had been keeping the palladium arc reactor in his chest to prolong his life for such a long time. As the palladium continued to seep into Iron Man's body, the palladium finally exceeded the limit and began to threaten his life. Li Shu muttered in his heart, "It seems that the plot of Iron Man 3 is not far away. Extremis inside is also more troublesome. If Iron Man's battle suit hadn't been further improved and many sets had flown out, and Little Pepper had been strengthened by Extremis, Iron Man might have really died in the Northwest. In addition, the plot of Iron Man 3 is coming, so the plot of Thor 2 is close. The battle inside is even more intense, especially the Dark Elves possessed by the type particles. They are a great threat. When the time comes, I'll definitely go and watch the battle. After all, the stronger I am, the better the drops. For safety's sake, I have to continue to work hard to improve my strength. Otherwise, I won't be able to watch the battle and will be sacrificed first." Just as Li Shu was about to enter the shop, a voice that was as charming as water sounded, "Do you need to hire employees?" Li Shu turned around, his eyes shining. He saw a baseball woman in a baseball uniform and tight jeans standing there. The baseball uniform couldn't hide her full upper body, and the tight jeans accentuated her hot curves. Her face was charming and full of charm. She was full of femininity. Black Widow ideographic period. However, compared to the movie, the woman in front of him was younger and more voluptuous. His assistant and Gwen were both very beautiful, but they were both young girls and still a little immature. The woman in front of him was very charming and belonged to the mature kind. She was a peach that could fully stimulate a man's hormones. Li Shu's mouth curled up slightly. Do you think a small shop like mine needs a staff? His shop indeed didn't need anyone. After all, a small shop didn't need anyone. But he could assign a bodyguard to his assistant. After all, he hadn't created a battle suit yet, and he hadn't activated his assistant's super ability yet. As for the Black Widow, who had decent combat power, she was quite suitable. As for the fact that Black Widow was here to spy on him, he didn't care. After all, he usually just watched and earned some money. There was nothing to hide. Even if he did something, what could S.H.I.E.L.D. do to him? Strength was the best thing to rely on. The current S.H.I.E.L.D. was not enough for him to fight. Moreover, it was because he knew the other party's motive. Therefore, in reality, he was in the dark while the other party was in the light. Black Widow shrugged. We have to try, don't we? After all, if you're looking for a job, you have to ask around. Quote. Li Shu carefully tasted the tea in front of him. You're so beautiful, yet you can't find a job. Why do you need to come to a small shop like mine? Quote. Black Widow smiled and said, it's because I attract too much attention and always get into trouble. That's why I have to keep changing jobs. It's too difficult to find a normal job now. Black Widow sighed. Upstairs. Daisy looked at the mature woman who was hot and full of charm and swallowed her saliva. So beautiful. Black Widow looked at Li Shu with a smile. So, do you need a staff? Li Shu shrugged. For a beauty like you, even if I don't have a job, I'll create one for you. I'm lacking a cashier here. Do you want to come? Black Widow nodded. Definitely. Li Shu snapped his fingers. Okay, you can come to work tomorrow. Then, Black Widow left leisurely. The beauty swayed and was full of charm. Li Shu also returned upstairs. Daisy's eyes widened. Are you really going to hire her? You're such a small shop. I'm afraid you'll lose money if you find someone. Li Shu smiled. What do you know? I'm finding you a bodyguard. Immediately pull up her information. I want to take a look. Secretly hack into S.H.I.E.L.D. and investigate her information. Quote. Daisy was confused. Bodyguard. Is she very good at fighting? Quote. Then, Daisy quickly typed on the keyboard. After some effort, she finally found Black Widow's information. Frames popped up one by one. It said that Black Widow had learned fighting, martial arts, and other close combat skills from her parents since she was young. Later, she immigrated to America and was taken a fancy to by Black Brute. Then, he began to train her to become a professional S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. Seeing Black Widow's information, Li Shu was slightly stunned. Are you sure this is her information? Daisy nodded. I pulled this from the innermost part of S.H.I.E.L.D. I also checked the records on the Russian side. It matches. He looked at the photo of Black Widow's parents. Indeed, there were similarities in facial features with Black Widow. It was obvious that there was a connection between parents and children. Li Shu muttered in his heart, it seems that this world is indeed different from the movies in some aspects. For example, in this world, there is Gwen, the ghost spider. Black Widow has parents and didn't enter the Red House for special training. Instead, she learned martial arts from a young age. Later, when she came to America, she was recruited into S.H.I.E.L.D. and became a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent to deal with all kinds of supernatural events. Daisy looked at the information. She's really powerful. She even participated in the Battle of New York not long ago and fought against aliens. Li Shu smiled and said, she's enough to be your bodyguard, right? Daisy hurriedly nodded. Yes, yes. The next day, Black Widow came to work here. However, he didn't provide her with food and accommodation. It wasn't that Li Shu didn't want to provide her with accommodation, but the place was really too small. There was no place for Black Widow to sleep. Time passed. A few days passed. These days, although New York was still not peaceful and there were constant gunfights and knife fights, there were no supernatural battles. Even if it was a battle between ordinary people, Li Shu went to take a look. Unfortunately, his luck was average and he didn't gain anything. That night, Li Shu was sleeping soundly. Daisy woke him up. Boss. It's time to work. Quote. Li Shu was in a daze for a while. Then, he suddenly opened his eyes and his eyes lit up. Send me the location. After Li Shu finished speaking, his cell phone rang. Immediately, a map appeared. On it was his location and the location of his destination. It was a location closer to the suburbs. I've finally waited for a transcendent battle. Li Shu looked at the red dot on his phone and his eyes lit up. He pulled his hand to the side and the window suddenly opened. Whoosh! His entire body sank into the darkness and disappeared without a trace. Daisy walked to the corner. At this moment, in the corner, there was a brand new computer. This was the more powerful computer that Daisy had purchased. Through this computer, she updated her search software and obtained version 2.0 of the search software. Compared to the previous one, this one could deduce the entire event by finding some clues and traces of transcendent beings. From there, she could predict the upcoming transcendent battle. For example, a super criminal was committing a crime, and the superhero noticed this and found clues. Then, she could deduce that a transcendent battle might happen next. However, this required powerful computing power and a large amount of information to filter. Even Daisy's current computer with more powerful capabilities could barely support her search for New York City and could only make a rough deduction. If she wanted to continue, Daisy needed to personally search for more information. However, even so, it was much better than only knowing the news when it happened. After all, this kind of foresight could give Li Shu more time to rush to the scene. It would not be too late by the time he arrived. Daisy put on her headphones and quickly typed on the keyboard. He easily hacked into the public surveillance cameras. She flipped through the surrounding cameras. Immediately, she saw Li Shu flying in the air. Definitely. She could not see clearly because Li Shu's speed was too fast. She could only see a blurry figure. Daisy smacked her lips. If only I could be as powerful as the boss. Then I wouldn't be afraid of anything. As she spoke, she looked at her weak little hands and sighed. If only I had super ability. It's a pity. God is fair. It gave me beauty and intelligence, but it will deprive me of other abilities. Otherwise, it would be too unfair to others. Li Shu's smile came from the headset. Darcy's eyes widened. Boss. When did you enter the communication channel? Quote. Just when you were being smug. When Daisy heard this, her face immediately turned red, as if it was going to drip blood. Then, she straightened her neck and said stubbornly, I'm telling the truth. How am I arrogant? Ah, right. Daisy was even more embarrassed and angry. She was going crazy. She wanted to rush into the earpiece and bite Li Shu. At this moment, Li Shu's voice rang in his ears. By the way, who are the two sides in this battle? Hearing this, Daisy immediately calmed down and quickly entered her assistant mode. She tapped on the keyboard. Suddenly, the scene changed. The camera cut to another scene. On the road, a car was speeding along. A square-faced man with a full beard was driving alone. At that moment, the man's murderous aura was so thick that it seemed like it was about to drill out from his face. Daisy tapped a few times. Immediately, the man's information appeared. After reading the message, Daisy took a deep breath. What's wrong? This man has participated in 2 wars. He's obviously very old, but he still looks young. His name is James Logan. Because he hated fighting, he went into seclusion and found a lover. But not long ago, his brother found him and killed his lover. The angry Logan came out of seclusion again. He's going to kill his brother. Looking at the relevant information, Daisy gritted her teeth. His brother is too evil. Hearing this, Daisy's words, Li Shu was slightly taken aback. It turned out that the protagonist of this battle was Wolverine. Definitely. At this moment, Logan couldn't be called Wolverine because he was still a skeletal claw and hadn't been injected with adamantium. After the battle with his brother, Sabretooth, he was dragged to be experimented on and injected with adamantium. Only then would he grow into a real Wolverine. But immediately, Li Shu's eyes flickered. Because this time, the opponents of the battle were Wolverine and Sabretooth. Their bodies had powerful self-healing factors and astonishing recovery abilities. If he could drop their self-healing ability, then it would be very difficult to kill him. After all, Wolverine was a man who had survived the detonation of a nuclear bomb. Although there was a small cover. But it was enough to see the power of Wolverine's self-healing ability. And the self-healing ability of the two was almost the same. If the two of them fought together, the chance of dropping self-healing ability was very high. If he could have their self-healing ability, then even in an extremely harsh environment, he would have a chance of surviving. This would greatly increase his survival ability. Thinking of this, Li Shu couldn't help but feel a burst of excitement in his heart. He sped up again. Whoosh! He shuttled quickly through the shadows like an ethereal ghost. Very soon, Li Shu arrived at his destination. A bar. He walked in. In an instant, he saw Sabretooth sitting in the middle of the bar counter in front of him. The other party was leisurely tasting wine. And Wolverine hadn't arrived yet. Because of Daisy's new software, Li Shu arrived here in advance before the battle happened. He took a cocktail and sat in the corner, waiting for Wolverine's arrival. Not long after, the roar of a car sounded in the bar and then stopped. Then, the door was pushed open. A man with surging killing intent walked in. As soon as Logan entered, he saw a familiar figure. His brother, Sabretooth, was holding a glass of whiskey and drinking leisurely. When he saw the other party, Logan's eyes instantly turned red, and the veins on his forehead bulged. Because the other party killed his lover. The only thing he cared about in this world. Seeing Logan enter, Sabretooth grinned. He raised his glass frivolously. Long time no see. Logan gritted his teeth and said, Why did you kill her? Hearing Logan's words, Sabretooth shrugged and said indifferently, just to attract your attention. Thanks for watching.